start this, first, welcome to the Museum of Indigenous People. Those of you who haven't been here before, I see a lot of local faces here, so I'll probably waste my breath on that one. Osio, Manuel Sarah, Guanto, John Lucky, Ayeli Yumia, Yumia. What I said was, hi, my name is Manuel. My name is Manuel Lucero, and I descend from the Cherokee people of Oklahoma, the Cherokee Nation out that way. And I am the executive director here at the Museum of Indigenous People. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Mark Winter, who owns Toadlena Trading Post up there on the Navajo Nation up there in the Mexico area. And he is, man, this guy knows more about Navajo than even I could ever wish to learn. Living up there with the people and really learning and witnessing firsthand how the people live and what goes into making these beautiful textiles. It's very different than what you're going to read in a book. Mark and I were just sharing a little bit of storytelling back and forth. And I had a feller once that I was doing a talk tell me that what I was saying wasn't true because he read 5 different books on Indians. Well, I guess we didn't read that book or the other 4, but nothing comes as far as expertise close to living amongst the people, being with the people, and listening to their stories and working with them that way. And Mark has done all that. He's been in the Indian trade business for how long, Mark?
55 years.
55 years.
Since I was 2.
All right, folks, so I'm not going to say anything else besides welcome to the museum, and hope to see all these same smiling faces at our rug auction on the 14th. Mark's going to tell you a heck of a lot more than I ever could, so Mark, you got the floor, bud.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for coming today. I know it's Saturday of Memorial or Labor Day weekend, so really appreciate getting a good crowd. So I'll tell you a couple things about me, which is my least favorite subject to talk about. I'd really rather talk about the blankets, but anyway. So I fresh out of high school, I went to a flea market in Southern California, and I found a beautiful little silver and turquoise bracelet. It had all the Indian symbols tooled into it. It was beautiful, and I bought it. I was kind of moved by it, and I bought it, and it kind of set me on this little path of wanting more. And so collecting always seemed to be in my blood. And so by the late 60s, I met a couple guys from Hollywood, and together we decided we should just take a trip out to the Navajo reservation where the things really came from and hit all the pawn shops and buy some cool old jewelry. And we started doing some Tupperware parties in Hollywood and buying and selling things. And in the meantime, I was doing arts and crafts, doing leather work. And so I had a little leather shop too in a little town called Idlewild in Southern California. And I kind of got on the route for some of the traders that would come and bring jewelry and I'd buy things. And one guy came in and he said, "Hey, I just picked up these 7 old Navajo rugs down in Palm Springs. And you know anything about them?" And I'm going, "Well, I've seen them on the reservation, and one of my 2 partners bought a few rugs when you were there, but that's all I really do." But anyway, he brought them into the store, and we laid them out on the floor of the store. Boy, did they look great. All those beautiful old rugs, and I thought they were great. And I knew nothing about him. He knew less than I did. All he knew is what he traded jewelry for, and that's what he wanted. And so he gave me a price, and I said, "Well, that's nice. It seems like a good price, but I don't really know." So we folded them up, and by the time we got them folded up, he goes, "Well, what if they're half that price?" And I'm going, "Well, I am a sucker for a good deal, but I don't know. I really don't know what they're worth, so I just really don't know." And so we're carrying them out to the trunk of his car, and he cuts the price again, and I go, "Oh, damn." So if I had any idea of the road he set me on, I ended up buying them, and it basically ruined my life. So anyway, so I set out to find out what I bought, and turned out one of them was a pretty darn good one at the time, and so I started kind of buying and selling them as I was doing my arts and crafts too, and by the through the early mid-70s, I was kind of going to antique stores and buying things and just selling them to people who would come into my store and kind of have a little business going in it. I just listened to, I think, too many John Denver songs, but I lived in the mountains in Southern California and I wanted the real Rockies. So I moved out to Southwest Colorado and because I figured that all those old ranches would have all these Navajo rugs and I could buy things off the ranches. And so that was kind of my idea. It didn't work out exactly that way. But in there I met a guy named H. Jackson Clark, and he ran Jackson David Company in Durango. He was the Pepsi soda pop distributor for the whole Navajo reservation. And he had started in 1957 trading soda pops for Navajo rugs. And so he started a little company that he called Toadlena. And they're still in business today. They have a nice gallery in Durango, and it's run by his son now. Toadlena in Navajo means no water. So the idea was they drank a lot of soda pops because there wasn't much water on the reservation. And so I met him, was asking for old rugs. I wasn't interested in the contemporary ones he was interested in. I was interested in the old ones. And so we ended up forming a little business partnership, buying and selling things. And, this is probably getting close to mid-70s. He showed me a picture somebody had sent him from Pittsburgh, and it was an estate sale, and it was a beautiful Navajo sheep's blanket. And I knew what it was just from seeing it in the books, and I said, that looks like a really real thing, and maybe I should fly to Pittsburgh and go to this estate sale. And he goes, really? And I said, yeah, I should. And so I did, and we bought it for $1,500. And when I came back, Jackson said, it had some damage on it, and he said, it's beat up. I'm going, yeah, but it's beautiful. And so we ended up spending at that time $1,000 fixing it. And the day I got it back, the place that fixed them was in Los Angeles, so the day I got it back, I went to what was called the Great Western Indian Show. And I showed it to a couple people, and some guy was there who collected them. And so he said, I'd like to buy it from you. I'm going, well, I'm kind of a collector. I don't really want to sell it. And so he figured out who I was, and the time I got back to Durango, he'd already gotten a hold of Jackson and had offered him $10,000. And Jackson was a businessman, and that was a good business deal. For $2,500 to $10,000 was pretty good. And he was kind of anxious to sell it to the guy, and I said, no, I think it's worth more. Well, I'm a kid with 3 young children that kids need shoes. And he's a businessman that has a lot of money, and I didn't want to sell it. It kind of clicked. He thought that was pretty amazing, that this meant more to me than money. And so, it ended up being what we call the cornerstone piece for what was called the Durango collection. We went on for another 10 or 15 years collecting everything. And we approached it like a coin collection or stamp collection. We had Navajo things, we had Pueblo Indian things, we had, the Hispanics brought the wool and sheep and some of the weaving traditions up to New Mexico, so we started collecting Hispanic things, we got prehistoric things. We ended up putting together a collection we called the Durango collection, and it's about 300 and some odd pieces, and we ended up donating it in 1989 to the Center of Southwest Studies at Fort Lewis College. At that time, it was appraised for the donation of about $3 million. So I didn't pay any taxes for several years. It's kind of nice, but anyway, so collecting was kind of my blood from the beginning, and so. Anyway, in the buying and selling, we saw a lot of beautiful things. It was a great time. Values were really going up. It was the first time Navajo blankets started selling for, $5,000, $10,000. Then it went to, in 1981, an auction at Sotheby's sold a Navajo blanket for $61,000. And in '83, it was $105,000. And it still never stopped. The values just have continued to climb and climb and climb. And does anybody have any idea what the record public auction for a single Navajo blanket now is? Anybody have any idea?
A couple million for a sheep blanket, maybe?
$1.8 million for a Navajo sheep blanket. And it's really the art, and guys kind of ruined our market really, but the guys that were buying Remington and Russell paintings and stuff for millions of dollars, and they get it home, they put it on their wall, and it'd be an Indian wearing a blanket, and they think, God, I really love that blanket, that's on that Indian, and they found out they could buy that blanket for $25, $50, $100,000, and that's what they liked the most about the painting. And so those guys kind of hit into the market and started running prices up. And in some kind, it's kind of been a shame because it's made them so expensive. But for a guy that had several, I didn't do too bad. So anyway, in 1985, I bought a beautiful 2 Gray Hills rug. That's a natural colored, really nicely woven Navajo rug. It was probably for the 1930s. And I had bought and sold a couple, and when I sold them, they didn't sell for that much more than other Navajo rugs, but to me they were much more special. They were more beautiful and better, finer made. And so I decided I was going to keep this one. And I went to a show in Sun Valley, and I showed it to somebody I shouldn't have. And he really wanted to buy it, and so he talked me out of it, and I sold it. I was so mad at myself after I did really well, but I was kind of mad at myself after I sold it, and I said, I'm not going to do that again. So I started collecting 2 Gray Hills rugs. From 85 to 90, I collected quite a few of them. And I became very fascinated in who made them. And so I come to find out that, you know, when I would buy and sell a 150-year-old chief's blanket, it was anonymous. There's, you know, sometimes we know a cavalry officer that collected the blanket, or, you know, a military or somebody working the mines or railroads or something. But that's the best history we ever had. We know nothing about them. And I came to find out that the same thing was true with the 2 Gray Hills. And here's a 50-year-old masterpiece. We don't know anything about the weaver. And that seemed criminal to me, that could really happen. These were the best living Navajo weavers, which really makes them the best hand weavers in America. And they're totally unknown. And so in 1990, I took a trunk full of Navajo rugs out to the area and started kind of working my way around, showing rugs to weavers and trying to find out who made them. And, you know, and the person that took me out there his brother had owned the 2 Gray Hills Post from 46 to 1959, and he worked out there. He had stayed in the business. He had a store in Cortez, Colorado. And so he knew a lot of the weavers, and so he took me around to really good weavers, and I'm sitting with some of the best living Navajo weavers, but I didn't really even know what questions to ask to really try to find out about what these things were. And so it took me kind of backing up a little and starting to do research. I traveled to every museum in the country that had collections of 2 Gray Hills, got the information I could for them, tried to get into as many private collections I could to get the information I could, and so that gave me kind of a base of information for these things. And that led to me publishing what I affectionately call my little pamphlet on the weavers. And so this was 25 years in the works. We did all the genealogies, we identified most of the good weavers, and I've never turned on a computer and don't intend to. And so I wrote it all longhand. My darling wife Linda here had to type it all. And so she typed it, double space it. I got my famous red pen and wrote all the changes I wanted to do. And 25 years later, we published this book. And we sold it for $125 a copy. And everybody said it was way too expensive. And so I now have, this is A Books. It's out of print. We haven't had any for about 5 years now. It's out of print. I have A Books. It's a out of print book distributor that you can go online to. And here the top 5 copies of my book are between $2,100 and $2,400. So we did okay. So it's proven to be a real popular book. And I'm going to talk about this little package here in a little while, but I'll get back around to that. So anyway, I became really fascinated, interested in studying all about the early blankets and the materials, and I read every book that I thought was appropriate, but mainly I met a guy named Dr. Joe Ben. He was the curator of anthropology at the University of Colorado Museum in Boulder, and he had started in '72 taking a sabbatical to learn about Navajo weaving, and he toured all the museums in the country and studied all the different, and we were lucky we had a guy like this because he was that mind of an anthropologist, archaeologist approached it, and he really resolved a lot of the issue. I first started looking at books on what I had, and the books didn't tell me what I was looking at, so I was kind of concerned with that. But Joe solved it, so we were lucky to have him. He died probably 20 years ago now. He really helped me get a footing. So anyway, when the story kind of starts with the Spanish, and we all know Cortez. When Cortez landed on the coast of Mexico after Columbus, Columbus sort of bumped into this, what we call the New World. They are looking for trade routes to get goods from the Orient to Europe. And so there was 3 routes. You could go overland in Europe, and you had to fight with the Moors, and so you usually didn't get there with your life, let alone the goods you had. The other way to get there was sailing around the Cape of Good Hope, which was the tip of Africa. Prevailing winds blow you right onto the rocks at the Cape of Good Hope, so sailing around is nearly impossible. So, Columbus and the people and his contemporaries at the time decided maybe the world was really round and you could sail out to Spain and get to the Orient. Well, he bumped into the New World, and he saw people dressed in cotton garments, and so he thought he was somewhere near India because the cotton had come from India and kind of had sailed itself across the Pacific, so he called them Indians. So that's because he thought he was somewhere near India, so that's where that term first came from. So the Spanish were really fascinated with the New World and all the wonderful things they found, especially the gold and silver, because it was pretty profuse. And so the Aztecs, which were the main tribe in central Mexico, had huge gold figures and everything, and they were really impressed with that. But when Cortez landed on the coast of Mexico, his goal was to conquer the Aztec Empire. He had 200 men with him, and this was a huge empire. And the first people he ran into were called Tlaxcalan Indians, and they were the weavers for the Aztecs. And so the Spanish chroniclers of Cortez's expedition describe the Tlaxcalans as being better dressed than they, the Spanish, were. And the Spanish really didn't think anybody did anything better than them. So those are very interesting comments to call out beautiful. So once the 10,000 Tlaxcalans joined Cortez, they basically thought maybe Spanish oppression wouldn't be as bad as Aztec oppression. And they were wrong. But they did join, they helped conquer the Aztec Empire and started weaving for the Spanish. So one of the things they were impressed with was the weaving skills. And so a garment came out of that sometime around 1700 that was made by the Indians for the wealthy Spanish colonial gentlemen. And that the best garment made was called the saltillo serape. And this is an example. This one dates probably to around 1750 or so. And so these were made on a Hispanic style European loom. They're made in 2 pieces and then joined up the center. And they left a neck slot in it. And so it was worn as a poncho, which came in very handy on horseback. So this is the first Western yoke. This is where the original Western yoke came from. And so the dyes that the natives used in the New World were the best ever discovered in the whole world. The reds and purples and pinks in this are cochineal, a little scale insect that produced carminic acid, and so it's a color-fast dye. This is the same color it was made almost 300 years ago. The blues and greens are indigo, which is another color-fast dye. And so obviously they were made to last, because it's incredibly finely done. And they were, made to repel water and be beautiful. And so you want to off top of it. So people can kind of see it closer. It's mine. You can touch it. It's wool on cotton. The foundation is cotton. What we see is wool.
So the wool came with the Spanish.
The wool came with the Spanish, exactly.
When you said Spanish, they're horizontal, this is in a horizontal.
There's not a horizontal loom with two pieces. But actually, the insertion of design, whether it's a native upright loom that we all are familiar with, or a loom, the insertion of design is exactly the same. It has to be done by hand. The technique is called weft-based tapestry. So the weft, which is what we see, is patted down and completely conceals the warp. So the warp is the foundation, and it's completely hidden. My wife came up with an interesting, people get those two terms mixed up constantly because they sound a lot alike. So she came up with a cute little way to remember it. She said, you weave from weft to white. So what you weave is the weft. The weft is the wool, the foundation is cotton. And they were made to last, and so they would take the hemp from cotton, and this was a pre-Columbian trade, and they would hand ply it. Rather than single strands, they'd spin the strands twice as fine and hand ply it, and that, because of the twisting, gave it a tensile strength. So all of these are hand plied cotton ropes. Later, they went to 3, but I don't want to get too technical with the crowd, so that gets a little more into it. But anyway, there's a very small number of these actually survived. You know, but the ones that did are in surprisingly good condition because they were very expensive. In the time this was made, it would have been hundreds of dollars. So basically, you could have bought a ranch, or you could have had something to survive.
Did you mention how old that particular one is?
Yeah, it's about 1750. 1750, 1800, right in that period. You know, we don't really know exactly. And carbon dating doesn't give us a fine enough. Yeah, but within that period, you know, we see some records maybe by around 1700 or so, this is starting to develop into a garment. And by this period, 1750, it's pretty fully developed. So, the Spanish pushed up into the Rio Grande Valley, and settled all along where the Pueblo Indians live in the Rio Grande Valley. And soon they constructed looms that emulated, they didn't bring those big cumbersome looms with them, they made versions of them. And the Hispanic version produced a little more of a heavier textile. And the blankets produced on those looms are called Rio Grande blankets, because they were made along the Rio Grande Valley. Now, it's good to also remember that Mexico is a fairly hot climate. The Rio Grande River is 5,000 feet, so everything is higher than that. All the mesas are 6, 7, 8, 9,000 feet, so it's a cold climate. We get very radical temperature shifts in New Mexico. We live along the river at about 6,000 feet, and so we get temperature shifts that can go, which you guys will here too, because you're high desert, but you know, we can get 50-degree temperature shifts, 60-degree temperature shifts from day to night. So, thinking about 1750 or even 1850 was before they put heaters in pickup trucks. So, you needed to have a really nice blanket. If you're going to travel around the Southwest, you needed the blanket, so they were insanely popular. So this is what we call a Rio Grande blanket. And this dates to about 1850 or so. And they're all not quite like this. This one's a fabulous little one. And I meant to bring a more representative example, but this is the only one I had. And this is one of mine. And this is just 2 shades of beautiful indigo blue. And so this is a little heavier. It's again made on the Hispanic loom 2-piece. And although they're banded, we call this banded in design, although they're banded in design, they're conceived. The designs are conceived. The next and the body is from. So they are very fashionable. They are very conscious of that. I kind of call it the Ralph Lauren period. So anyway, the indigo is color fast, so this is how it was made. It was this period. And indigo is really the only dye ever discovered by man. As you all know, with some of your clothes, with the blues and purples can fade real easily. If they end up getting in the sun, a closet that's got a lot of sunlight, it fades. This is fadeless. So it stays. This is the color it was made. So the Pueblos that lived along the Rio Grande Valley started weaving long before the Spanish arrived. In the Anasazi periods, they were already weaving on a primitive loom. Originally, it was called the backstrap loom, and they have a strap that runs around the waist, and by leaning back against another strap that's holding the other side of the warps is elevated above them, and they would lean against, create pressure, loom tension, and so it gave a weaving surface in front of them. Soon, long before the Spanish arrived, that shifted to what we call a fixed rod variation of it, and that is the upright loom that we see the Navajo. They just affixed it together, and then added a tension strap that held the tension. And so the Pueblos were weaving on that loom. Now, because they weave sitting at that loom and reaching as far as a company can, basically most of the textiles that came off it were woven wider than long. Okay, where the serapes you see were woven longer than wide. And so this is not a great example because it's kind of a special one, but this is a Pueblo, what's called a maza, and this is probably a dancing cave, and this is probably from one of the more western Pueblos, maybe Jemez or something. But this is the size, it's woven, it's all hand-spun cotton, and then it's been embroidered with wool yarns. And so this is the late 19th century, but as you see, so the Pueblo Indians soon shifted to using wool. It was a much more practical and warmer thing. And so the only things we still see done on cotton after, toward the end of the 19th century was ceremonial garments, and that's what this would be. And these designs we see these designs painted on early Anasazi garments. And then later when they got the wools, they started using embroidery, but it's basically the same designs. So, and I want to say, I'm going to cover 300 years and 3 or 4 cultures here. So if you have a question, please disturb me. Just raise your hand and I'll try to, stick to. So we're catering to the audience and what the audience really needs to know. So really, I don't mind the questions at all. So I'm trying to talk kind of fast so I get through everything. So
One
anyway,
quick question, the Satios, do they still make those?
well, not the old ones.
Not the old ones, of course, but they still.
Well,
Mexico, they make-
that's the rundown. I mean, if you ever been to Acapulco and the guy with the serape guy comes up to you, and he's got like 200 serapes on his arms and showing one. That's the watered down version of the saltillo. The saltillos were made until going on to, the Mexican-American War. We stole about half of their country, and so Mexico went from, a pretty wealthy country. Well, Mexico is really the apple of the world eye. People don't really realize the great wealth, like the great chocolates from Switzerland, they're from Mexico. The great chilies, the Oriental food, that's all from Mexico. There was a lot of great things. And the little cactus beetle was the second largest export ever out of the New World. It was the rage of Europe because it produced such a fabulous red color. It was second only to gold and silver in value, and almost as valuable as silver pound for pound. It was just a red dye. Bug blood is all it was. But the Spanish that settled in the New World didn't want the guys in Europe to know what it was, so they kept it as a secret. They didn't say it's just bug blood, it's kosher. So they kept the price up, and it stayed really high for years. So, good question though. So anyway, the Navajos pick up the loom from the Pueblo Indians probably sometime around 1600 to 1650. Originally, they got the sheep, and the sheep were mobile food, basically. And And the Navajos were kind of semi-nomadic, and so they would travel around, and the sheep could travel right with them. It was mobile food, it was great, but then the ladies saw that the Pueblos were weaving with it, and so they started working with wool. So sometime around 1600 or 1650, the Navajos started making blankets. Now by the 1700s, Spanish were writing that the Navajos are making these beautiful and wonderful blankets, beautiful blankets. And the governor of New Mexico in 1798, in his report back to the viceroy in Mexico City, who's the head government official in the New World, talked about all the issues that were going on in Santa Fe, and one thing or another. And when he gets to the Navajos, he says, oh, they're the scourge of our place. They were very good raiders and marauders, and they stole guns, and they stole horses, and they stole sheep, and they stole everything from us. And they're really our biggest problem, because they would raid all the Spanish villages. He ends that comment by saying, but the blankets they produce are the single most valuable trade item in the Southwest. So, back to the heaters and pickup trucks. So I'll talk a little more about it in a second, but the early Navajo blankets were wider than long. They wove one-piece dresses that had a front, or two-piece dresses that had a front and a back, and they wore a one-piece dress, what was called a manta, after the Pueblo mantas. And this is not an early one. This is about 1880s or so, but it shows a Navajo manta. And it was worn. Oh, I got you. See. So there you go. So this same thing would have been made 1820s, 1840s, 1850s. This happens to be a little later example because the early ones are very rare. And so there you see it's got the dark brown center, the beautiful red, and then the blue end panels. It's done in diamond twill. This also could be worn, raise this one arm up for me, as a one-piece dress. Like thusly, bring your arm out here. You can see. So typically you see both the Pueblos and the Navajos wearing in the early photographs, you see the dress with a similar piece draped over the shoulders. So this is here. Stay here, I got it. So this is a earlier, about 1850 or 1860 dress panel. It's one half of the dress, so this would have been worn like this, right? And the second panel would have been attached down the sides. And this is handspun brown, the red. Now the Navajos were red man in the red land, that broken red bases. They were fascinated with red. And the Spanish had this beautiful cochineal, but it all went to Spain. They're very wealthy in Mexico, we get it, but it wasn't a commonly traded commodity. And so the Navajos would see the Spanish with their beautiful serapes, but they didn't have a dye source for red. So they took to, when they were raiding, back to the raiding of the Spanish villages, they would take every piece of red cloth they could find. And they'd take that red cloth back to their wives, that were weavers, because everybody wove in those days. If you weren't a Navajo weaver, you weren't getting a husband. If you couldn't make him a blanket, you didn't get a husband. So you learned to weave when you were very young, and that's what they did. And so the red in this is all the bayeta. They would take cloth apart strand for strand and weave it back into their blankets. The dark is natural brown. You can't really see in the slide here, but the designs and everything are done in indigo blue. And so the Navajo term for that was bayeta. And so everybody thinks bayeta was this and bayeta was that, and it wasn't this and it wasn't that. No, it was red cloth. They didn't practice spectrophotometric analysis on it to find out if they could take it apart. It was red, it was the color provided. And so they were profusely using the red. And the next group of blankets I'm going to show you are called Navajo Classic blankets. Those are the blankets that they made for themselves, and all the red materials that there are wrapping materials. So earliest type of Navajo blanket that we really know of came out of a Spanish punitive expedition in one of the branches of Canyon de Chelly. It's now called Canyon de Muerto or Massacre Canyon. And the Spanish chased a group of Navajos. The story starts a little reason where it came to this, but I won't bore you too much today. But they chased a group of Navajos up and they hid all the women and children up in a cave. And the men sort of went up Canyon de Chelly and disappeared in all the rocks. And so the Spanish, when they were coming back down out of the canyon, they heard some babies crying. And they realized the Navajos had hidden the women and children. So they slaughtered 115 Navajos and took 33 slaves that day in January of 1805. There's a piece, about a third of what is called the Navajo First Face Chief's Blanket. So we know they were making those by January 1805. And it was just brown and white, broad stripes with accents of indigo blue stripes on it. And so that was, we don't know how long before then they were made, but we know they were made by that time. And that is the $1.8 million blanket. So I didn't bring that one today. But so sometime in about 1840s to 1850s, the Navajos started adding red bars, 12 sets of red bars on their blankets. And the Navajos never referred to it this way, but we call those second phases. And the points that they picked to do it were probably compared to chakras in Eastern Indian religion, like energy points that accented the body. But this is a classic second phase chief's blanket. And there we see the 12 sets of double red bars. The difference in the red color is the different types of cloth that they gathered. But if you just erase the red bars, you have a first phase. If the weaver wouldn't have put the red bars in, I would have got another $500,000.
Now, does the red fade if you're not careful?
No, it's cochineal and it's fadeless dye, so it doesn't fade. Later dyes, synthetic dyes were discovered in 1856 for silk, 1857 for wool, and those dyes, which were instantaneous, were started to use because they were so much easier to use than the early natural dyes, but they weren't color fast. They would bleed and they also would fade. And so we'll get into that a little bit more, but these are all natural dyes. And so,
Will these bleed?
will they what?
No,
They don't bleed either?
no.
Wow.
No, they're color fast.
Yeah, nice.
And so, lo and behold, when you actually see it on, you see a little bit of Little Red Riding Hood. And here is lapels. And there's your cuffs.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that great? So that's right. This is no teasing aside. This is the Ralph Lauren period. But it's just beautiful natural brown, natural white, indigo dyed blue, and then the beautiful red. And so these blankets, were very valuable and very sought after and still are today.
I can't quite tell, is that two separate pieces or there's just a crease there?
In the center,
Yes.
no, it's actually how they were woven. Because they were woven, they weren't finished at the end, they were finished in the center. So what you're seeing is where the warp wasn't, or the weft wasn't really packed tight to cover. So they wove the blanket halfway up, and they flipped the entire loom upside down and wove it the other half of the way. So all Navajo blankets were actually finished in the center of the blanket. Yeah. And so that's what you're seeing is just where she was kind of separating her weft at the end and packing it in. So that shows. And often, if this blanket was absolutely original, sometimes you would see the selvage edges tucked in here, or sometimes there's little ties that come out. But the selvage edges here braids one way, and on the other half it braids the other way. We're flipping the loom over. You don't read about this much in the books, but when you start studying the examples, you see they were done that way. So. So I'm the only dealer you've ever met who gave his first phase away. I gave it to Fort Mills College. I had a beautiful one and gave it away. So the red bars that come in around 1845 or 1850, the first documented collected, which is a key word in how we do things, was collected on the Stitgraves expedition, like Stitgraves National Forest, in 1851. And a couple of his military officers took back a second phase blanket, so that's the oldest one that's actually documented that we know of. It looks exactly like that, with the 12 double sets of red bars. But soon, you know, there's a lot of reasons for it, but you know, the kind of austere chief's blankets got that name. Navajos never had chiefs, so it's total misnomer. They never even had chiefs. But it's probably the suit and tie. It's probably the elder's blanket, okay? And then the younger Navajos wanted red and wanted more jazzy and things going. That's kind of the Hawaiian shirt, is my way of describing it. And slowly what happens is what the kids did, like in any culture, affected what the adults did. And so by 1840 or 1850, they were making these beautiful serapes, and those are really the most expensive of the Navajo blankets because they represent more the art of the Navajo rather than the clothes. But that started affecting what the seniors did, and so the bars grew, the center bars grew together, and then the corners and things grew to diamonds. And this is probably the most recognized of all the blankets. This is the Navajo third phase chief's blanket. And all the red is the bayetta, the raveled cloth, and the indigo blue, you know, the designs on it, and then the brown and white. Now this is the blanket.
Is indigo a plant?
Yes. Yeah, and it grows all over the world.
And the pinkish color of the other one, was that when you twisted some white?
Well, they got, it was red. Any shade of red you could get, whether it was pink or lighter. See, so she put the prize material, the darker red in the center of the blanket and the lighter on the outer side of the blanket. Now this was a lucky weaver because she got a large amount of red cloth. So this is all one match material. It's a very interesting type of bayetta. And if you can see it, it's kind of speckly. Maybe it has a speckly integrity. And there's two ways you can make red cloth. Okay, you can weave red strands, or you can take red strands, dyed red strands, and weave a piece of red cloth. Or you can weave a piece of white cloth and dye it red. Okay, and so the cloth was made in both of those methods. A lot of this cloth came from Europe. Some of it came from Eastern United States in the later times when they started building all the mills to do stuff. Some of it even came from Mexico. We don't really know the sources of the red cloth that the Navajos unraveled. This is the ladder. This is woven white, dyed red. And so when the Navajo took it apart, it had like a tie-dye or speckled effect, and that's what gives you the speckled effect of this blanket. And so the one of the early books written on Navajo weaving, the guy said it was called Manchester Bayetta and came from Manchester, England. Now, I don't have any idea where that came from. I've tried to research it and so I've never been able to find any verification for that, but this is what they call Manchester Bayetta. And so, I just show you what happens here. It's kind of fun.
Beautiful.
Not bad, huh? So anyway, as I mentioned earlier, the blanket I bought in Pittsburgh in 1975 or 1976, this is it. That's the blanket, yep.
It's beautiful.
Oh.
Really
I had a chance to keep a couple things when we gave the Durango collection. And they already had a third face, so I kept the third face up there. So I've had this a few weeks, I guess you'd say. So, beautiful, huh? And so, you know, they had to be light enough, you know, that you could, it was easy to, you know. But the early, you know, references in the early books called these as warm as buffalo robes, yet much easier to handle. Because the wool, they were so densely packed that the wool was very, very insulative, so they were very rare. And they were really popular amongst the Plains Indians. There was a big native market for these amongst the Plains Indians. And the earliest documented collected blanket was collected in 1833 north of St. Louis with a pagan Indian chief. And it was the first face chief's blanket. So we know by 1830s they were traded that far away. And next month I'm doing a talk at a Plains Indian symposium about Navajo blankets amongst the Plains Indians. So we've got some nice early photographs and things of that to show how popular these were. So, anyway. You again. So, of course, the Navajo had women. They had children, so there are child's blankets. Unfortunately, I couldn't get one out to bring, but I did bring a really wonderful. This is a woman's third base blanket. So it's made smaller, and Ralph Lauren would tell you, if you do big, bold designs, that's for men. Narrow or thin designs are for women. These guys figured it out long before Ralph Lauren. So you can see, so this is third phase. These come in first phases and second phases, but this is a nice third phase. And you can see she carefully put her two different colors of red, the darker red in the bands and the lighter red in the diamonds. So very well thought out. Good one, huh? You'll take it? So this dates to about 1865, about Civil War period. So the 1860s were not great for the Navajos, unfortunately, because we as a country, Americans, took over the Southwest after the Mexican-American War of 1846 and 1847, and we, under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, we took basically half of the country, which includes where you're sitting right now, California, Utah, the other part of Texas that they didn't get during the Alamo period or something, New Mexico, and like I said, in Arizona. And so the first U.S. fort was called Fort Defiance, they called it that because it was in defiance of Navajo autonomy. The Spanish had never conquered the Navajo. The Mexicans from 1821 to 1848 never conquered the Navajos. But the U.S., we were a different kind of fighting people. We were a little more fierce. And so first thing we did was set up right in the middle of Navajo territory, we set up a place called Fort Defiance and basically told the Navajos, you are subjects of our country, we're going to take care of you, but you're citizens now and you're going to mind your manners. So that went pretty good, you know. It went pretty good for several years, but then a really terrible thing happened called the Civil War. So in the early 1860s, the country became divided. All the military started leaving the West to go fight the Civil War back east. And all of a sudden, the Navajos said, hey, they're gone. This is great. So they started raiding again, profusely raiding again. And so, you know, it's really terrible how the Navajos were treated, but since the government was in a civil war, they didn't think. So they hired Kit Carson, who was the famed Indian fighter from Taos, out and basically said, solve the Navajo problem. It was very brutal how he did it. You know, he killed all the sheep, he piled the blankets up in front of them and burned them. So that's why the blankets are so rare, as they were destroyed. He herded up about 12 or 14,000 Navajos, and marched them out to eastern New Mexico, put them in a concentration camp. Not my favorite part of the story, so I don't dwell much on it. They stayed there for 4 years. And after the Civil War was over, they decided to let the Navajos go back to their homeland again. But while they were at Bosque Redondo, the officers had the Navajo weavers make blankets for them. Because the blankets were so good, they had all these weavers there. And so this is a blanket made at Bosque Redondo for a military officer. And so they provided commercial yarns to weave blankets with. So in the earlier days, this blanket would have been red, white, and blue. But now with all the colors that they were given of yarns, you see this. So this was made in the 1860s. You see that bold sense, but it kind of gets watered down with all the coloration. So this is a serape. So this is made like a saltillo in the sense that it's long and narrow. But you can see how this. So there was quite a few of these made. You know, a couple dozen still exist. I'm sure more than that were made, but about a couple of dozen of these still exist. And several of them have documentation that goes back to the original military family that was in charge of the Navajo at Bosque Redondo. Yes. So this became Germantown. That's the term.
I had a question about the wool. Before Bosque Redondo, they had churro sheep for the Spanish. It was very high lanolin content wool.
No, lowland. Lowland.
Okay. Well, it was very, I understand it was a very good wool. When they had to use the commercial wool, is there a noticeable difference in quality?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's a long story. What you just said was kind of a mouthful, and there's a long story. I talk for the National Churro Foundation every year because I have my own very bad attitudes towards it all. So they used to hate what I thought, but now they kind of come to realize what I'm saying wasn't true. It's historically accurate. So they have become, and I bring examples of your blankets and show the churro, and it's a whole big thing we do. I won't go too far into that because it's kind of a sidebar for us. But yeah, and so the Spanish, just to briefly explain to you, the Spanish sheep that was brought for food traditionally to the New World were called a churro, and it wasn't even a breed, it was a derogatory term for the wool they had. But when that wool showed up into the American Southwest with these 60-degree temperature shifts from day and night, breed is important in wool quality, but so also is climate is very important, and its food chain is very important. So in the southern Colorado Plateau, that includes down into the Navajo Reservation, there were no predators for grass. The buffalo didn't make it down that far. So the Spanish, in the first expedition into our area, where our trading post is, because we're in what's called the Newcomb Mountains, was in 1705. They described the grass as being chest high. So when those sheep got to that unlimited supply of food in those radical climates, the wool changed. And so it wasn't really a breed, it was a magical time in history that made the churro so great. It was real low in lanolin, and it was very long, staple fibered, and so it catered to Navajo hand spinning. It was like a perfect magical combination. But the later wools, merinos, were high in lanolin. Now the Navajos didn't have enough water to drink, let alone enough water or solvents to wash that lanolin out. So that became what we call the contamination period, and then the wool declined and declined. So, but the churro was real dry and really, really nice to do. So anyway, here's another type of a serape. These have narrow brown and blue backgrounds. This was very popular with the Spanish. It was very popular with the Pueblo and with the Navajo. So this is a Navajo serape, and they were, because a lot of them were collected amongst the early Pueblos, they were called Mokis, M-O-K-I. We've all seen that term. It actually is a derogatory term for the Pueblo people. But this is a Moki serape, a Navajo woven. All of the lighter red in it is the Rabbel Bayetta. This dates to about 1865 to 75. this is my favorite thing to do. This is to show you, people really like it, to show you how it was designed. Isn't that cool? So,
It's very soft,
yeah, it's a nice pliable blanket, it is. And, so, anyway, so to get on with the story, when we let the Navajos go back to their homeland in 1868, we destroyed all the sheep. So we had 10 to 15,000 Navajos, half of which were women that were weavers, great weavers, but no wool. You know, we destroyed the sheep, and so the government apologized for how badly they treated the Navajo, started issuing them tens of thousands of pounds of yarns. Most of those yarns were bought across the river from Philadelphia at a place called Germantown, Pennsylvania. And so that's the yarns that the Bosque guys got were the first Germantown yarns. But then we started giving them the Navajos, and they came in about 15 colors, and certainly not all Navajos got that many colors, but if you think of the Navajo as an artist, and he has a palette, and the palette is brown, and it's white, and it's indigo blue, and it's a little bit of red, that's the palette they use as an artist in their weaving. But now all of a sudden they were giving a palette that had this huge expanse of commercial yarns. And so it was a color splash. They went crazy with it. And so they created blankets that were called Germantown eye dazzlers. And they literally went nuts. So this
sorry,
is
they're called Germantown what?
eye dazzlers.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a great example. This is about 1875 or so. So that is a great example of an eye dazzler. The best one I've really ever had. And so these became very popular with the contemporary art scene. Andy Warhol, Jasper Johns, Kenneth Nolan, all these guys were really crazy for these. They were single-handedly in the 50s and 60s and 70s pushed the price up on these because they were fascinating. But if you imagine it as a piece of art, if you're a painter and you're painting and you get up around here, so you don't like what you did, you repaint the canvas. If you're a Navajo weaver and you start weaving up to here, you're 2 or 3 months into this piece already. So you don't have an opportunity to stop all of a sudden and change what you're doing. So you're kind of stuck with it. So you can see, although it's pretty complex design, it's really well balanced and really well measured. And so a lot of these became, made for the Hispanic market, and they kind of Mexican it up a little, did fancy fringes on it and stuff. Because we made Plains Indians too poor. We put them all on reservations. They became too poor to afford Navajo blankets. So the Navajos looked for the next marketplace, which was Hispanic. So they made a lot of these and sold them to the wealthy Hispanics in New Mexico and even down into Mexico. It was what was that this one? Here, I'll hold it up so you can see how it actually looked to the weaver when they were making it. So they are a little eye dazzling. So far so good. How am I doing time-wise? So we're doing pretty good. So anyway, these were the products of the Navajo, but this is 1885, 1895. And so these colors and these designs did not cater to something that was very much in vogue in the United States, and that was called late Victorian taste. And so that was the taste that was dictated what you did completely. And these just didn't cater to it. And so what did cater to late Victorian taste was Oriental rugs. So it went better with your furniture and all that stuff. So the different traders in their different regions of the Navajo reservation, depending on what they would do or could do or what the trader could possibly sell, started dictating new designs to the Navajo weavers. And most of them were based originally on Oriental rugs, okay, which had pattern borders, big diamond centers, a lot of strong reds. And you have Lorenzo Hubble out of Ganado Trading Post. And you know, he said to the weavers, make it any color you want as long as it's red. And so the famous Ganado red rugs came from that. The traders up near Four Corners area like kind of the old eye dazzlers, and so those are the fancy red mesas or teases that are kind of electric and fancy. They still have their roots in here. And then there was all other kinds of weaving areas, and I'll get into some of those a little more when I talk a little about some of the rugs that are in the auction. In our area, those rugs started to be called Two Gray Hills. And so that's what the name really was. Toadlena, which is our post, was the largest post in the Two Gray Hills weaving region. There used to be 7 trading posts, basically about 5 to 7 miles from each other. And I'll just say this, it's not an accident we own the post at Toadlena. They, in 1911, the first juried event for Navajo weaving was held, and they called it the Shiprock Fair. And it was put together by a bunch of Midwestern ladies that were used to going to fairs, and all the fruits and vegetables and handcrafts and everything were all judged. And they got together, the traders' wives got together, go, why don't we have kind of a trade fair for Navajo arts and crafts and other things that they did. And so the first one was in 1911. And the weavers in our area had an affinity against using red, so they just used natural shades of wool. And in the first Shiprock Fair, there's a picture in my book, a Two Gray Hills rug, a natural colored rug, won top prizes and this was the very beginning of the regional period. So the traders said, hey, wow, this is kind of cool. You know, they kind of niched themselves. And so they started encouraging the weavers to make the rugs nicer, better designs and everything. And the rest is history. Our rugs became the most famous and some of the, considered some of the finest weavers. Now this is a really fun rug. And this was, I have a photograph in my book of the, let's put the photo on the website, of the 1913 Shiprock Fair with the Toadlena Trading Post booth, and this rug is hanging. So this is the oldest actually documented Toadlena Two Gray Hills rug.
What year?
1913. And the next door booth was our next door neighbor, which was the Two Gray Hills booth. And there they have some of the rugs from the Two Gray Hills. We also own one of the rugs from that booth. And just dumb luck. When I saw it at a show one time, I recognized him from seeing it in the photograph and got it, took it home, and was really kind of proud of it. We don't know. Yeah, we don't really know at that time. But they started making them heavier, thicker, more really good uses rugs, packed really tight and firm. You know, they weren't wearing blankets anymore, so they were just good rugs. You see the border around it, the kind of orientalized central diamond. The rest was kind of history. And so Navajo rugs lived on. And so we started having a lot of brand name weavers. And so our area knew more about the weavers than any other area. But that was very, very little. So my book accented that. We ended up doing genealogies, 25 years to do the book, and asking thousands of questions. We obtained the lease for the Toadlena Trading Post in 1997, and I thought I was a Navajo rug expert at the time when I went out there, but in the last 30 years, almost dealing and living with Navajo weavers, I've learned quite a bit from their perspective of it, which is really nice. And I got interviewed. We first opened the Post. Gallup Independent sent a newspaper reporter up to interview what we were doing. We did a great big party. We had probably 800 people at the post for a big party. A lot of Santa Fe people, we brought buses out, and people from all the years in business, everybody came to go, what the hell's Winter doing on the Navajo reservation? He likes old rugs. But anyway, so we had a really nice party, but I got interviewed by this reporter. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been interviewed by reporters, and I hope none of you are reporters. But I found they know how to ask the dumbest question that you could possibly imagine. So I told this lady what we were doing, and we're gonna try to keep the weaving tradition alive for another generation and everything, and she finally says, well, Mr. Winter, that all sounds really fine and dandy, but just how long do you think you'll do this? And I was so indignant, because I was so excited that we were gonna do this, and I actually had made arrangements. I got this trading post. We were leaseholders to the Navajo Nation. They own everything on the reservation, so we had to, it was quite a task. It took quite a long time to get all the permission to do all this. So I decided to answer her question, kind of as lewd as I thought the question was, and I told her, I'm gonna buy 10,000 rugs from this community before I leave here. And she went, oh, okay. I knew I shouldn't have said it. During COVID, so we only buy rugs for within a 15-mile radius of our trading post. That is our regional style, originally called Two Gray Hills. I put our name in front. We now call them Toadlena Two Gray Hills. Our local chapter is now called Toadlena Two Gray Hills. We actually made it stick with the Navajo Nation too, which we thought was pretty good. So I realized soon I couldn't afford to support the whole Navajo Nation. So we really wanted to be very supportive of our local community. During COVID, we bought our 8,000th rug out of our community. So you gotta be careful what you ask for on the Navajo restaurant, that's all I'll say. Because, you know, we try to be very generous to the weavers. I was used to selling expensive rugs. I didn't mind if they were expensive. I didn't mind. I wanted them to do bigger and better and nicer and finer and everything. And previous traders, and I'm not gonna say anything bad about them because they were influential. If they brought a rug and the rug was, say, a $4,000 rug, and the trader looks at it, he goes, that's a beautiful rug, yeah, I can maybe get 6,000 for it, but if I can buy it for 3,000, I'm gonna make another $1,000. It's just business, nothing wrong with it. So they gave the weaver 3,000. But what was the message to the weaver? Don't make a $4,000 rug anymore, make a $3,000 rug. So they made a $3,000 rug and got 2,000 for it. They made a $2,000 rug and got 1,000 for it. That's the point we arrived there. And it took me a while to realize, but we tried to reverse it. We said, okay, here's your 3,000, but I'd rather pay you 5,000 next time. Make it twice as big, twice as fine, really nice. Do your wool better and cleaner and everything. And so, you know, so weavers brought me a rug half as big and said, you said 5,000. And I went, yeah, but you forgot all the rest of it. You know? But they all tested me, you know. I love it when people say, what do the Navajos think about this or that? I'm going, well, what do you guys think about this and that? Everybody's people, they're all different. They're not like one consciousness, you know. So they all tested me in their own way. They found out it was real. We would pay them more money if they made them bigger. We put everything on computers so we knew exactly what we paid them. And it became really fun. And some of the old grandmothers would come in and I'd ask them how much they wanted. And it's Dequishama, which means how much is it, my mother? And so we had a lot of traditional grandmothers who didn't speak any English, and so I speak very Pig Latin, Navajo, Trading Post Navajo, I call it, but we get along fine. And so it was just, it worked fabulously. It went really well. And so the grandmother would come in and I'd say, how much do you want? And she'd say, look it up. She couldn't even remember what she got. It's been a year since she finished her rug. She just remembered she was really happy. And so just look it up. And so we'd look it up and go, well, this is the same size as the last one. We gave you 5,000. She'd go, oh, which means yes, okay. That was the negotiating. It wasn't like fist fighting. It was really kind of wonderful how dealing with them. They're absolutely fabulous. So anyway, I'll tell a quick story before we hold this up. So when I was first interviewing the weavers and stuff, and you can go to sleep. I told you it was kind of stupid. I didn't know what questions to ask and everything, but I knew a guy whose brother had worked out there, and he introduced me to some great weavers, and so I was kind of sitting in royalty, but I didn't know what questions to ask, or but I figured out what questions to ask, and so somebody said we should really go see Clara Sherman. She's really old. She's in her 80s now. But she was really a good weaver, and she knows everybody, and she worked for the tribe dealing with the elderlies that were younger than her. And she was fabulous. She spoke good English, and she was the bright as could be, and a fabulous sense of humor. If anybody thinks I went out to the Navajo reservation to take advantage of a bunch of little old Navajo ladies, you got another thing coming. These ladies are clever as could be. So I had a little trunk of rugs, and I was going down and interviewing, and so I took somebody's advice and figured out where Clara Sherman's Hogan was, and I went over there, and so I interviewed her for a little while, and she spoke good English, and she was very helpful, and so I asked her if I could show her a couple rugs, and by that time I had 2 rugs that I sort of determined in my own mind were made by the same maker. They had what I call a fingerprint of design, and so they were done by the same weaver, I thought. And so I pulled out one of those rugs, and this was the first time it ever happened. And Clara said, I made that. And I thought, oh my God, I've been waiting for this moment for a couple of years. And so I learned the Navajo sense of humor, which they have a fabulous sense of humor. So I immediately said, oh no, you didn't. And she said, I made that. And I'm going, no, you didn't. She goes, why do you say that? I said, because I made that one, Clara. You didn't make it. So she started laughing and giggling. So she took me to one side of her Hogan, and she had those old military steamer drums stacked up about 3 or 4 high. And she told me, take that top one down. Take that next one down. And I got down to the 3rd one and opened it up. She told me to open it up, and she said, there's a box in there, a wooden box in there. So I opened it up and pulled out the wooden box. I handed her the wooden box. And she opened the box, and she was sitting where I couldn't really see what was in the box, and she's kind of midway through. She pulls out a photograph of her standing in front of the rug, and it has a 1948 date. I go, oh my God. So that was the beginning of the end. I never thought, I mean, we all hear that Native Americans don't like to have their pictures taken, so I didn't even think there'd be pictures of these old grandmothers with their rugs and early things they did. And so when we started buying the rugs, we wanted pictures. And so a weaver would come in and say, I want to take your picture. And they go, no, I don't want my picture taken. I'm going, you want a copy? They go, oh yeah. So anyway, I could go on for 2 hours with Clara Sherman stories. She gave me, her trading with her was amazing. We got her SWIA that puts on Indian Marcus Lifetime Achievement Award when she was in her 90s. We got her the Governor's Excellence in the Arts Award, and a lot of other things. So this is Clara, about 1940. And she was an incredible designer. So this is a classic 2 grades. You see the different colors, like this is a slightly darker shade than this. And they would, although they have, the main models of sheep are brown and white. They also have brown sheep, when they get old, it's kind of turned to golden, and so they can use that. And then by using their carding combs, they can blend lighter and darker wools to get subtones of all the colors. So I think this is probably 8 or 9 colors of wool. You can see all these darker grays and lighter grays, and this is a different color, all beautifully done. And just beautiful designs. And she was spectacular. And we took her to Santa Fe, and I had a store in Santa Fe I bought to try to market the weaver's rugs. After I saw how much people marked them up, we were trying to wholesale them, and I didn't like that idea. So we bought a store in Santa Fe, and Clara used to come do a lot of weaving demonstrations for us and stuff, and she was just a riot. She just loved it. Chatted, she had a great sense of humor. She just would bust people up. And she was a great weaver.
Historic brand is also natural.
Everything's natural. It's all natural.
Marge, I noticed that there's
Yes. Here's
Can
her,
you talk to us about
here's
that?
her spirit line. Well, you know, I heard a lot of stories about that.
Yeah.
Probably been told to you. But, so I made a point of asking hundreds of weavers. I've probably bought rugs for at least 500 different weavers in my career. And so I asked them, I had these sheets that I had them kind of fill out, and I did it in questions, like I said, I learned to weave from. I sold my first rug too, so they would kind of finish. And so they usually have a daughter, or granddaughter, or something help them with these sheets. But so one of the things I asked them was the spirit trail. And so the answer I got the most about why they did it was because my mother told me to do it. And that was good enough. You know, that answered the entire question. But kind of the group conglomeration of answers to that is that they put their heart, their soul, their creative ability, they put everything into the rug. And they don't want to leave it there. So it's a thread of life. It goes from rug to rug to rug that keeps the weaving generation alive.
So the ones that don't have that spirit line, their mother didn't tell them to do it?
I have them bring in a rug and ask about the spirit line. They go, oh, I forgot. You know, or one the old grandmother came in and I asked about the spirit line because I just was trying to get stories from her. I haven't told. There's a whole section in my book called Anatomy that talks about all the different things. I dissect the rug basically. There's a whole section on spirit trails. And so I asked this lady about her spirit trail and why she did it. And so I got a kind of vague, often you get a vague answer because it goes kind of into their spiritualism and into their parents. And so a lot of times they got to kind of know you a little bit before they'll really open up to you as far as certain personal things. And so I bought the rug. And so the next time the lady brought me another rug, it was probably, a decent rug was 6 months to a year before I saw them again a lot of times. Although they borrowed money from me, so they'd come in and get money. We started loaning money, uncollateralized, interest-free. And the reason is that we didn't want 2-month rugs. We wanted masterpieces. We wanted them to take the time. So if I'm gonna ask a lady to spend 6, 8, 10 months making me a rug, how's she gonna live? So we offered, everybody told me not to do it. They'll just all run away. There's no reason why they'll ever come see you again. Well, I had much better luck than that. Although, let's say I probably paid for an awful lot of rugs I never saw again, but so, the next rug that lady brought me didn't have a spirit trail. So she was traditional, she didn't speak English, and so I asked her daughter, what about the spirit trail? So her answer to her daughter was, you didn't like it because I mentioned it. All it took was me mentioning it, and she thought it might have been a flaw and it might have hurt her price. And so I had to explain to the daughter that no, that wasn't the point at all, that I liked the spirit trail as part of it. But sometimes it's like I forgot, sometimes they didn't do it. My mother didn't teach me that, so I don't know how to do that or what it means or anything. So not everything has a spirit trail. So anyway, this is one of my favorite rugs that I brought to show you. There's a reason. Our post was mainly owned by a family named Bluefield. They were very good Mormons. The dad was really high up in the Mormon church, and they bought the post. It was built by two brothers named Smith in 1909, and George Bloomfield bought it in 1911. And in 1934, Bloomfield's daughter, Grace Bloomfield, married a guy named Charlie Herring. And so Charlie went to work for his father-in-law and started running the post, and that was before 34, but in 34 he bought his father-in-law out. And so he had one of the best weavers make a rug for his wife as an anniversary present. Now I show this rug to rug experts all the time and ask how old it is because I know exactly how old it is. And everybody says, 1950s, 1960s. This was ordered in 1936. It was made in 1937. Proof positive. contemporary. And this is a lady named Bessie Minigos, and she was two of the very best weavers. And this contains about 5 or 6 miles of hand-spun yarn. And it's in brand new condition. When Charlie sold the Toadlena Post in 1956, he moved to Farmington because they had kids going to school. They didn't want them to get schooled on the reservation. And so they went to Farmington for the schooling. And he stayed in the Indian business, but he did quit in 1956. He took this to Farmington. That's as far as it ever got from home. It's now further from home than it's ever been. See, here's her spirit trail. And so Grace didn't want one of her, she didn't mostly fancy rugs. She didn't want a fancy one. She wanted a simple, elegant one. So this is the only one that Bessie made that is really simple. Usually they're more complex than this. What's that? And Bessie used what should be really traditional, because the idea is you're letting the spirit out of the rug, right? So it should only be a thin one line out. One line out goes over every single other warp as it's being woven into the web of the textile. So that's what this is. So it's hard, you can't really see it because it's a broken line. See? So she kind of if she would have turned it, come back in to make it a solid line, which a lot of the ladies do, some ladies say that's not right, it shouldn't be done that way, this is the way it should be.
Is there a certain length that they do, or?
Usually it's taking the background color, and taking it out of the rug. But there's a lot of different ways. Like I had one weaver, Selena Dale, and she was one of our best living weavers, and she was a great tapestry weaver. The one thing we would do, trying to claim what ownership we could, was I had a Polaroid camera, and we'd go visit all the weavers and take pictures of the rug on the loom. And that actually gave me more ownership than $2,000 worth of money they had. And I owned that rug because I took that picture of it. It's a funny mentality, but that's how they looked at it. And so I went to see Selena, and she was working on a rug, and it was almost done. And she was just doing her spiritual. It was the upper right. No, I'm sorry. She had a little bit of the rug done, and it was on the lower right, and it wasn't a single spiritual, it was 3 lines that went through there. And so I'm going, what is that, a spirit freeway or something? And so she laughed, and I said, well, this is like ridiculous. You know, I don't quite get it. Don't you get it? This is supposed to be at the end of the rug. When you finish, that's when you do that. And she says to me, my mother told me that you put it at the beginning because it lets all your creativity into your rug. So it's basically the same story, kind of in reverse. And I got that. You can read it in my book if you can ever find one. But it's all the different stories I heard from them about the different spirituals and stuff. So it's fun to. So anyway, this is I don't want to bore you much with this. This is Bessie Minigos' 1957 first prize winner. I'll hold it. They look nice this way. But this was Gallup Ceremonial's first prize winner, and at the Shiprock Fair, first prize in 1959. This is again Bessie Minigos. Yeah, 57 and 59. I bought the ribbon for it too. And so, anyway, so Bessie probably would have been by far the best two-gray hills weaver, which, depending on, I mean, somebody may like red rugs, so they're like two gray. Somebody might like the 8 figures, you know. So when I say our rugs are the best, I really speak technically, because the wool is spun the finest. You'll find this is spun. You can look at how beautiful straight the lines are. Beautifully, it's so crisp. That's a great word I like to use too. And so Bessie would have been the best living Navajo weaver. if it wasn't for her cousin sister. Her cousin sister was named Daisy Koch. And Daisy just won the prize with spinning her wool so fine. And she won Gallup 25 years in a row. She was literally unmatched. And she died in 1990, the first year I went out there to interview weavers. So I never got to interview her. But she had a sister she taught tapestry for by the name of Mildred Natani. And I spent a lot of time with Mildred to interview her because I wanted stories about Daisy. And so Mildred told me that Daisy could spin wool while she was doing the dishes. Because she spun it as fine as thread. Okay. Now this and that rug I just showed you is probably about 50 or 60 wefts per inch. So that's how it's bruised. So she has to go back 50 or 60 times to move an inch up the web of the textile. Okay. Daisy's average was 80 wefts to the inch. This is the finest she ever did. This is 130 wefts to the inch. And can I just turn your light for a second?
Can you do what?
Can I just turn this light? for a
Absolutely.
second?
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
So here's Daisy. No. No, go ahead and pull it tight. Pull it a little bit tighter. Isn't that amazing? It's translucent. And so Daisy, this is one of her last pieces she did. And unfortunately, in 1962 was the last year. She should have won Gallup, but she didn't because the chair of the board of the Gallup ceremonials had bought her rug from Toadlena. And he didn't want to enter it and be in competition, so she didn't win in 62. The last year she won was in 61. When you take this around and so people can actually touch it. Oh, and we have signs that say no moths allowed. And you know, it works for the literate ones. But the illiterate moths are very problematic. And I just blame it on the parents. You know? But that's a huge well, yeah, you know, Navajos use a lot of dryer sheets, but you know, I picked up dryer sheets and there's a moth underneath it, so I'm not quite sure. Well, mothballs are good, but they're probably as bad for you as they are for the moths, the little critters. And so anyway, the museums, I hate to say this in a museum, but the museums say freeze them and put them in a freezer. And I say, have you ever been to Alaska? And they go, no, why? I said, because it's frozen 9 months of the year, and the other 3 months there's 8 million bugs. So what does freezing really do? It doesn't kill the eggs, it only kills the larva and the little winged carrier. And so, what I do is I kind of figured this out logically by spending time with the weavers and stuff. And if the moths could live in the air and in the sunlight, there would never be any wool on it. They need it all. So I'm thinking, well, why isn't it there? Because there's air, sunlight. So I sun them. And so I had the head bugologist from the state of New Mexico start dating a friend of mine, and he goes, oh, you gotta come see my friend. He's got so many rugs and textiles and fleeces and everything at this trading post. And so he brought her out, and she started saying, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? And I told her, and she said, does that work? And I'm going, works for me. And so, time she left, she was there for a couple days. Time she left, she goes, you know, you may be ahead of us. And I'm going, it's money. It's my money. And so I have to be. So she started testing. And she came up with this little statistic that I'll share with you. And 97 degrees for 45 minutes will kill anything. in a piece of wool. And so I think it could be a little shorter and it can certainly be a little bit longer. But we have big tables in the sun, the rugs, we put them out in the sun for an hour or so to do that. And I do it once a year to all of my textiles, which is thousands. And so it's a big pain in the butt, but I'm kind of a slave to them if I want to own them. But they're very problematic. That takes care of them. So if you ever get bugs in your closet or anything, in your clothes and stuff, you have to be super aggressive against them because they spread like crazy. And in the first level will show you they're there. They'll leave little white tracks and stuff. You've seen those. And that's when you just got to get on them and get very aggressive. And just literally lay things out on, if a patio or something, don't put plastic over the top of it because that makes it condensate and so it'll make it moist. Just lay them out in the sun, lay a tarp out or something and put them all over. I've got friends now that when they find them in their closet, they take all their clothes in their closet out and put them out in the sun. It works. And so she unfortunately, before she got to do too much more research with what I was doing, died of cancer. So, but then everybody, my Daisy's back here. I just want to make sure. So here is this is one of our weavers. Her name was Marianne Foster. She made these well into her 90s. And she made some beautiful sand-painting rugs. And she made them in the 50s in color. And she stopped making them because the trader at Two Gray Hills she was making them for got killed and she didn't ever want to make anymore. She was brilliant. And so she was making Two Gray Hills and I was buying them and she was very traditional, didn't speak any English. Her bill got a little bit high and I wanted to make sure she was making me rugs, so we went down to see it at her Hogan. And I asked her if she had any old pictures and she pulled out pictures and she had learned from Hostine Claus, who was the famous sand painting weaver's niece, was her cousin sister. Now what that means, their fathers were brothers. First cousins, what we call them, Navajos call them cousin sisters. And so she had showed her how to make sand paintings because she said you'd get more money there related and it helped her out. And so she did them, but when he got killed in 58, she had a rug on a loom in 58, he got killed. She stopped wouldn't make anymore. So this was probably in early 2000s when I went there and she showed me the pictures and I said, make me a sand painting. And she said, hesitantly, she agreed to do it. So she made it in that. She thought I wanted Two Gray Hills, so she made it in natural colors. This is about 60 or 70 wefts to the inch. And the image of this is called the night sky. And it's really one of my favorite sand painting images because the idea of it's very fabulous. On the side here, you see 6 holy people, what they call yays. And we call them yays, but the Navajos, it's 2 syllables, it's yay. And so there's 6 on each side, and that represents the 6 moons or the 6 or 12 months of the year. The Navajo calendar has 13 months. And so this is the blue moon. And the top figure is the horned sun and the bottom is the horned moon. And so what's happening here is the yays are holding up the heavens, looking down at what they've just created. Isn't that a neat kind of inside-out view of the universe? Beautiful. It's beautifully finely woven. She wove typically about 60 or 65 wefts to the inch. She made me about 6 of these. It took her about a year and a half or so to make each one.
And what are the birds?
What's this? Yeah, the birds, you see that in the image. I'm not as much into the imagery as the weavers. That's kind of their own thing, and so I sort of leave it be all the imagery in the sand paintings, which all are very many. But you see the birds in the image, and I think they represent, they're 4 colors, or in this thing, like really 6 colors. So that I'm not as sure about. But it comes, when you see the image in drawings or things, they're in that too. So she obviously got this from some kind of a drawing. But then these are the constellations you see in the background, and then this is the Milky Way. And when you see the images like Mother Earth, Father Sky, which is another image. You see the constellations and you see the, and so Father Sky obviously is the sky, and then Mother Earth has the 4 sacred planets in it. She did do some of that image too.
What type of loom did she use?
Just a Navajo loom, yeah. And it's all hand spun, no dyes. And it's all hand spun wool. But these are all just natural shades of wool she chose to use. Like I said, she made me about 5 or 6 of them. Boy, they were a treat. When they come off the loom, it was like a great, joyous day.
The constellations actually reflect the constellations.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, now that you're all experts in Navajo weaving, I'm going to show you one and I want you to date it for me. And I feel fairly confident that you guys can date this rug. And I'm sure you haven't seen it before, but I'm sure you can date it. So this is a young weaver named Pamela Brown. She made me her first rug when she was 16, and she went on to do these autobiographical things that are just unbelievable. And we've run a nonprofit for long before COVID. During COVID, it took off, and we had a meeting at Toadlena and of some of our key donors during COVID. And so we had her do a weaving demonstration, and so this is the rug she made. And all of the donors wanted the rug because she was weaving on it. And I said, no. So we have a lot of fun with this. So, see, I told you guys would know the day. Nobody said it, but everybody got it. So anyway, what I was going to do next was just show you a couple rugs from the auction and tell you a little bit about it.
What, question on that beautiful big daisy toggle sheet. How long would it have taken her to, I know you said she could weave while she was doing dishes, so.
Spin.
Spin. Oh, spin.
She did one a year, basically.
One per year.
One per year. She was fast.
Yeah.
So she took, I can say this to this crowd because it's a slightly older crowd. She took the Evelyn Wood speed weaving courses. So anyway, no, she was fast. She was a little lean, mean weaving machine, I called her, because she really was, she would weave it. And, I wrote my thing, I have about, 50, 60 pages in my book, all her whole career and all the things she did and stuff like that. And somebody said, there's not enough personal things in there. And so her sister-in-law is the cover girl for my book. This is her sister-in-law's rug. This one that's on the cover here. And her name is Virginia Deal. And so I went with Virginia, just lived about a mile down from the post, so I went down there with this thing in mind to ask questions. Well, what can you tell me a little more personal about Daisy? Virginia spoke pretty good English. She was probably 80, well into her 80s, and she said, she sure could drink. I thought, well, that's not the kind of story I would put in my book. She said, oh yeah, she would come visit me and I could tell she'd been drinking because she was singing real loud when she'd come and see her. But she taught Virginia her tapestry, and so Virginia was our darling. Really, she was our best friend at the post and stuff, and she was there a lot. And Virginia could speak the best Navajo with the best Navajo, and she could speak the best New York with the best New York. She was born and raised and lived her whole life on the reservation, and whenever we'd have people come visit us, particularly if we were having a meal or something, we'd run down to Virginia, and she'd come up. And no matter what the conversation was about, this lady could always say something super intelligent, be involved in the conversation. She was just brilliant. She was wonderful. And so that rug she made me was 4 by 6. It took her 5 months to spin the wool and well over a year of loom. And she made me 5 of them in about 13 weeks. Which of course she got old and passed away. But anyway, and I'm going to go to this before I say, because this is the limited edition of my book. We did 50 of this particular one, and it came with a bookmark done by the weaver of the COVID rug. This is Pamela Brown, and we made a special slipcase for it that slipped in and out of. And the regular book was $125. These were $300. I've never seen one of these for sale again, because the book came out in 2011 in August, and I wanted to come out in August because we got a lot of book signings at all the gallery openings and Santa Fe and stuff. It was very well thought out. But, so we got married, Linda and I, in June of 2011, and we had 1,000 people at our wedding. And people said, I've never been to a wedding this big, and we're at the end of a dirt road on the Navajo reservation. All the collectors, all the weavers came, we had a lot of people come. But we got all the colored plates. You ever seen when a book's printed, they print 4 on a page and they're upside down and everything? Well, I got all those to do the final proof before they were printing it. And so I got those, so everybody that was at our wedding got to see them. And so we sold all of the limited editions that day. They were gone, so we never really got it for sale. And so this one was one I kept, and I donated it to the museum. It'll be in the auction for sale. So hopefully, but the regular edition, just the book itself, is well over $1,000 now. So that one should bring a pretty good price, because they're what I call unobtainium. So I'll show you a couple of textiles that are here for sale and tell you a little bit about them. I think they help tag with the numbers in case somebody wants to write it down. This one we put in, and so I don't want to just show the things that we put in. I was kind of hesitant to do it, but I got talked into it. This is called a Mayo Serape. This is woven by the Mayo Indians on a similar loom that the Navajos used. They are the coastal Indians along the Gulf of California, about halfway down, across from Baja. And so they are an indigenous tribe there. They've been there for years and years. And going with this will be a catalog that's over there. And by the way, there's all catalogs of some of our different shows and stuff over there. They're all for you guys. Take what you want. If you have a friend that'll want one, take it. There's some extras we have, and we're kind of thinning out a little bit, so we thought if everybody want to take the catalog, I think there's 3 different catalogs of 3 different shows that we did. And one of them is on the Mayos. We didn't do that at Toadlena, we did it at Gallery in Santa Fe. But these are woven on the same loom, very similar to Navajo loom. They have lacy lines. This is about 1900, and this is all beautiful indigo blue. And so it will be in the sale. So, and it comes with the catalog too, but you can just go steal one. So, and then here's another. Now this was our really our best seller and our best weaver. And this was, the name is Esther Et City, and she wove all these figures from rock art drawings. And so Toadlena is a canyon. Right there, there's a creek that comes down, there's a canyon, goes up, there's a waterfall and stuff. About 10 or 12 miles north is the next big canyon that comes out of the Chusca Mountains. The area is called Sanasti. Her family lives up in that canyon, and there's a lot of rock art on the walls. And so she was a 2 Gray Hills weaver. She first brought me one of her 2 Grays with a couple Cocopellis on it, and I said, let's get a piece with it. So I said, you know, she kind of niched herself, so she made me quite a few of these rugs. She's pretty old now, and we haven't really seen any nice rugs from her anymore. This is a little older one of hers. It's all natural hand-spun wool. It's not super fine like some of our weavers, but you know, the art is really fabulous. And she was our best seller out there. So she was another one that took that Everwood speed weaving course. So she brought us a lot of rugs. So let's see. And then this is one of my other catalogs over there. On one of the shows we did in Toadlena was on what we call fancy or Sunday saddle blankets. And this is a fancy saddle blanket. And mostly these are the only things the Navajos really made for themselves in the 20th century. And so they weren't to go, you're not gonna weave this fine design and very fine weave and put it under your saddle. So mostly these were more lap robes. I see early photographs of the gallop ceremonials and you see them wearing them over their laps and stuff. But it wasn't really, although they're saddle blanket size, they weren't really used as saddle blankets. They were too nicely done. And I collected them. Most of them I collected came out of pawn.
What?
Came out of pawn, off the reservation or the nearby pawn shops around the reservation. When I spent my years running around there till I found them, because they were Navajo owned and ended up getting pawned.
Is that
So-
Germantown yarns?
The fringes are the plied yarn, but this is probably 1930 or so. So we don't tend to call that Germantown anymore, but it isn't inaccurate. It's just
Right.
what the yarns are.
No.
He's talking about the yarns. The fringes are of the Germantown.
Okay.
So to me, they're the little jewels of Navajo weaving. And they don't take much room, and they're just always fabulous designs. You know? And so there's 2 books up there, 2 catalogs. Please take them. It was a big one. It was a show. Our shows at the Museum in Toadlena were up for 2 years. And so I got this after the show, and so it's not in the book. I thought it was. This is a little tapestry, very fine. Again, I didn't want to just feature stuff I gave to them, but this is one I did. And so this is woven by Daisy Togglechi and her daughter-in-law, Della Togglechi. And so Daisy spun the wool, and Daisy and Della woven the wool. It was beautifully fine and beautifully nice, and very reasonable. If this was, I just put it in at a really good price, so. Anyway. I'm saying I'm not only gonna show the things that I put in, but I forgot about this one. This one comes with a copy of my book, because when I sold this, I gave them a copy of the book. And this is done, what? Yeah. This was done by Claire Sherman's niece. And so her name was Catherine Nathaniel, and she was one of the great illustrators. I think it's about 6 by 9. And so I sold this some years ago for $18,000. People died. I got the rug back. It's in the sale. It's a beginning bid of $10. So if anybody needs a rug this big, it is beautifully finely woven. There was a trader at 2 Gray Hills from 46 to 59. They Willard Layton. He had turquoise mines up in Nevada. So he used to take the local people. I know numerous of the men that used to go up and work at the turquoise mines with him before they died. And so he had them put a little bit of turquoise. He had the weavers put a little turquoise accents to the rugs. And so those, when he got killed out there in 1959, the weavers wouldn't do them anymore. So he started doing it in 1946, 1947. So it positively dates it from that. Now, it's in my book in a chapter called Unknown Master Weaver, because I felt sure by the fingerprint of the weaver who did it. And so I went to see Catherine. And she was very cantankerous. And she had been interviewed by somebody who was doing the book on 2 Gray Hills Rugs. And so, first off, they promised her a book when the book got done that she never saw. But more important to her was they took all her family photos. And the book includes a bunch of her family photos and never gave them back to her. So when I met her and I said, I'm doing this book and I want family photos, it was like, so what? So she denied making the rug, and I knew whose fingerprint it was. I knew who made it. She said, I didn't make it. So it's in my book on a chapter called Unknown Master Weavers, because I couldn't get the name. Afterwards, when I finished my book and gave her a copy, she told me she was. So, and it comes with a copy of my book with the rug, it'll be the auction. But it is beautiful, I mean, she was great, and that was Claire Sherman's niece, although they're really close to the same age. She was a niece from an older brother of Clara's, so she wasn't that far in age. They're all gone now. So anyway, here is a few other rugs. You have a place for that? You have a place for that? You get a book? And this is a rug that was popularized by a guy named J.D. Moore, who's a trader in Crystal, and this is called storm pattern. Some of you may be familiar with it. The idea is this is the center of the storm. These are the lightning bolts that go out to the four sacred mountains, and there are four sacred mountains that surround the Navajo reservation. And storms are, in the deserts, a storm is a very important thing. And the Navajos have three types of storms. They have the maelstrom, you'll read it in my catalog there. And in the maelstrom, it's the lightning and thunder and it's noise and it's everything coming, that's the maelstrom. Like us guys, they're always a lot of trouble and making a lot of noise. Then they have the female rain, female storm. That's the one that's real white, real soft. You know, like a sprinkle. And then they have the coyote storms. The coyote is the trickster in Navajo mythology. And the coyote storm is the one that comes and the lightning's going and it's thunder and it's loud and everything and you just that's so. And you never get the rain. So that's the coyote storm. So this is a storm pattern. These are water bugs, rainbow bars, and this is sort of a classic pattern that was first seen in the early 1900s J.B. Moore catalog, although this is probably from the 50s or maybe 60s. Just a really good rug. It's lot number 130. Write that down and remember it. And here's another regional site. We did show the sand painting. The sand paintings contain the yays, and this is the yays with cornstalks. So here we see two of the Navajo holy people, or three rather, and then it's surrounded by the Rainbow Guardian. The Rainbow Guardian is usually, in the same painting I showed you, didn't have the Guardian, but mostly they do. And then you see the cornstalks. The cornstalks are kind of the tree of life for the Navajo. So this is all hand spun. This would be the 20th century, probably 1940s or 50s. And the animal in her store dies, which is all you ever get. And this is number 200. What's that? Well, I was just going to say that. Because the tag, which is an early tag on it, is pretty cool. I need my glasses, the old man. But it has the weaver name. And so that's really rare. You can really find an early rug like this. And this is 1950s. Oh, vintage rainbow. Yay, hand carded. I'm sorry, this wasn't the one. Another rug that I saw had a tag on it, had the weaver name, which I thought was pretty cool. This one didn't. I'm sorry. I was wrong about that. So, but great rug. These are great decorative rugs. These generally go on the walls. Oh, that's right. I remember the name now. This is the one that has the name. And this is probably from the, 80s or so. And it's a Two Gray Hills area rug. It's got the holy people on it. See, a couple of the yays. And this one had the weaver's name on it. And it is, what is it? Sorry, a little too fine. But it does have an original tag, which is always fun. I just like to see those on the rugs, that they actually stayed with the pieces. Sally Simpson, Sanders, Arizona. So,
Now, they call that a Burnham pictorial.
yeah, that's what they are.
Bruce Burnham wasn't he the Or his
Yes.
grandfather or
Well,
father?
it's great, he's fourth generation
Right.
from Burnham. And yeah, those, what they call the barber begay ladies do that. And so this is from Sanders, so that makes perfect sense that Burnham
Right.
probably had his fingers in on it.
Right. That's a beautiful rug.
Yeah, it's a beautiful rug. And this is number 104, write it down. This is the one I was thinking of that has, it's a 2 Gray Hills rug. And just a nice, hand-spun little 2 Gray Hills rug. Little smaller, little piece from our area. Oh, no, this has a tag but no name, unfortunately. I know I saw one.
What's the post? Is it 30,000 or
It's just a generic tag, it doesn't have a name, it's got the tag, but it doesn't have the post name. Like ours have our trading post name. But
That's
there was,
really a beautiful, typical 2 Gray.
yeah, it's a real classic,
All natural colors.
single diamond, yeah, 2 Gray.
Yeah.
And so, there was one back there, I must have not grabbed, went through and grabbed a couple to show, was a lady, Teresa Begay, and Teresa Begay, well, rugs for her. She lives in what's called Sheep Springs, which is down a little bit south of Toadlena. But I knew Teresa. And so, this is what we call a 4-in-1. And this style was done by, what was her name? It has a tag in here. This says a Shiprock Trading Post tag, but it looks like it was cleaned with the rug. And this was, she had a son that became a good weaver too, but Mary Long was her name. That was her name. And so she lived up around T-Snow's Pass, so she's got a T-Snow's Pass in there that she has. This is a yay mache. This is a 8-night ceremony on the night way, when the Navajos dress up and impersonate the yays. And then those are just the holy people, the yays down there. But here they're actually in human form. And since we've been out on the res for 30 years now, we've been to quite a few of the ceremonies. So, it's beautiful. And we had a group of a couple families of weavers that made these 4-in-1s. I don't know why they did that, but they would come in, and they'd have these 4-in-1 things, and they'd always say, "Are you a really confused weaver?" They go, "Why?" I said, "You can't figure out which design you want to do, so you have to do a bunch of them." They'd always giggle. You can't over-tease these ladies, because if they get ahead of you, you'll never win. They just love teasing me to death, so I'd always tease them with what they do. But this is a very, very nice rug. It's kind of got its original fuzz on it, which could come off and be a little nicer. And then this is just a really nice early 20th century, just a classic Navajo rug. Really bold. This is all hand spun. The bright colors would be aniline dyes. It could well be, the period of J.B. Moore crystal. But this looks like it's maybe coming from the Four Corners area a little bit more. But we never really know who made these, unless there is a tag with the name. We really don't know. But it's just a really great Navajo rug. It's in really good condition too. And these are perfectly good to put on your floor, and they'll outlast us. So, and this has probably already seen 20, 30, 40 years on the floor. But really well woven, nice and thick and heavy, and just a great Navajo graphics. This is what we love about it right here.
So what do you call that rug? Design?
Well,
Regional?
it's an early regional. I call them catalog rugs, because the early catalogs, Hubble produced a catalog, J.B. Moore produced a catalog, and they're usually these simple, very bold designs. You don't get a lot of floating elements or anything, just kind of simple, bold designs. And so, like I said, it's kind of crystal era, but the rug seems to come more from the Four Corners area. So I don't think this would be really it's not a catalog plate like J.B. Moore used, and it's really kind of typical of what he did, but it's the quality, They tended to be 4x6, almost exactly in size and stuff, and really just super well-made rugs. And these were very popular during the arts and crafts movement in America, because they went with all that early arts and crafts furniture. So you see the old, really great Frank Lloyd Wright or Green from California, great houses. They always have really wonderful rugs like this on the walls. Well, I haven't run out of things to say, but I'm going to give you guys a break. So if we have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them. And all I can say is thanks for coming and spending some time with us. Oh,
Yes.
that, well, I guess I missed that one. That is a transitional wearing blanket, a Serape style wearing blanket. That's about 1880, 1885 wearing